जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। गोपीजन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। जय गोपीजन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना। यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना। यमुनातीरावनचारी। यमुनातीरावनचारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमदि डिवाइन ग्रेस अबे चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमदि डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद महाराज की अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोप गोविंदाय नमो नमः। Reading from so we're reading from the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 9, entitled Dhruva Maharaj Returns Home, text 3. तद्दर्शनेनागतसाध्वसाक्षितौ अवन्दताङ्गं विनमय्य दण्डवत्। दृग्भ्यां प्रपश्यान् प्रबिबानि वार्भकस् चुम्बन्निवस्येन भुजैरिवाश्लिषन्। तद्दर्शनेनागतसाध्वसाशितौ अवन्दताङ्गं विनमय्य दण्डवत् दृग्भ्यां प्रपश्यान् प्रबिबन्निवार्बकस् चुम्बन्निवस्येन भुजैरिवाश्लिषन् तद्दर्शनेनागतसाध्वसाश्रितौ अवन्दताङ्गं विनमय्य दण्डवत् दृग्भ्यां प्रपश्यान् प्रबिबन्निवार्बकस् चुम्बन्निवस्येन भुजैरिवाश्लिषन्. Matajis? Very Bhagavan. Word for word meaning. Tad darshanena. After seeing the Lord, agata sadvasah, Dhruva Maharaj, being greatly confused, Shitau, on the ground, Avandata, offered obeisances, Angam, his body, Vinamaya, prostrating, Dandavat, just like a rod, Drigbhyam, with his eyes, Prapashyan, looking upon, Prapiban, drinking, Iva, like, Arbakah, the boy, Chumban, kissing, Iva, like, Asyena, with his mouth, Bujai, with his arms, Iva, like, Ashlishan, embracing. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. When Dhruv Maharaj saw his Lord just in front of him, he was greatly agitated and offered him obeisances and respect. He fell flat before the Lord like a rod and became absorbed in love of Godhead. Dhruv Maharaj, in ecstasy, looked upon the Lord as if he were drinking the Lord with his eyes, kissing the lotus feet of the Lord with his mouth, and embracing the Lord with his arms. Purport. Naturally, when Dhruv Maharaj personally saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, he was very much agitated in awe and respect. And it appeared as if he were drinking the entire body of the Lord with his eyes. The devotee's love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so intense that he wants to kiss the lotus feet of the Lord constantly. And he wants to touch the tips of the toes of the Lord and constantly embrace his lotus feet. All these features of Dhruv Maharaj's bodily expression indicate that upon seeing the Lord face to face, he developed the 8 kinds of transcendental ecstasy in his body. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So welcome all devotees for today's class. I seek the blessings of all assembled Vaishnavas. So this section, as we are discussing, this third verse today, is describing how Dhruv Maharaj, after having performed austerities in Madhuvan under the instruction of Narada, while he was performing such tapasya, the demigods themselves became a little perturbed. So the demigods then went to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and to seek the reason or to seek some solace for their apparent misery. The Lord told them, don't worry, it is only my disciple, Dhruva, my devotee, Dhruva, who is actually doing his austerities. Don't worry, I will take care of it. And so therefore then the Lord mounted on the back of Garuda and he came to this place in front of Dhruv Maharaj. And in his form he exhibited his beauty in front of Dhruv Maharaj. So Dhruv Maharaj, now seeing this form in this verse, in the next verse as well, he is describing his great ecstasy upon seeing the Lord. So some interesting points in this verse. That first it is mentioned how Dhruv Maharaj was in a state of confusion. Agata sadvasaha. So Prabhupada here translates as being greatly confused. His confusion was basically in awe and reverence. So, in the sense that a person has reverence for someone. For example, if the spiritual master comes or some great senior Vaishnav comes, and one has a little awe and respect, but at the same time there's an intense desire to come close to that person also. So one is a bit, careful in one's dealings. Like the heart says run, but the mind says stop. So here Dhruv Maharaj is feeling that conflict within his own self, that he is greatly eager for the Lord to taste that sweetness of his beauty, but at the same time he realizes, oh, here is the Supreme Lord. So then it is mentioned how he expresses himself. So Dhruv Maharaj, when he sees the Lord, it is said that he immediately bows down. So while looking at the Lord, he was staring as if he wanted to drink the beauty of the Lord with his eyes. Someone drinks only when one is... Does anyone drink for pleasure? Unless it's some other drink. But in general, drink is for when someone is thirsty. So there's an intense emotion. There's a trishna. There's a vegam. There's a push. There's an urge which makes one want to drink. So similarly, this is the urge, or Prabhupada mentions as the intensity that he sees when he sees the Lord. That's why it's mentioned when he sees Drigbhyam with his eyes, he wants to piban, he wants to drink. So seeing the Lord, he feels as if he wants to drink him. And then when he bowed down in front of the Lord, he's doing a dandavat in front of the Lord. It was as if that he wanted to kiss the Lord's lotus feet. That was the desire within his heart. Prabhupada say here, sometimes devotees also want to kiss the Lord's lotus feet. Pujaris beware. And want to touch the lotus feet of the Lord or embrace the lotus feet. So as Dhruv Maharaj was paying dandavats, as if he wanted to kiss the Lord's lotus feet. And when he touched the very tips of the toes of the Lord to pay respects, his internal emotion was he wanted to embrace Ashlishan. He wanted to, as if he wanted to embrace. So one can understand from these descriptions that Dhruv Maharaj, as Prabhupada also mentions, is exhibiting this platform of bhava. Of course, he achieved this bhava through the mercy of the Lord. He is example of one who comes in Kripa Siddhi. He gets this by the mercy of the Lord himself directly. So the Lord touches him with his conch, and Dhruv Maharaj is transformed, and his transformation of his desire is now expressed in these verses, how he's actually exhibiting the platform of bhava. So Prabhupada mentions that he also experienced Ashta Satvika Vikar, the 8 transcendental exhibitions or ecstasy in the body. So we know, like there is being stunned, sweating, stamba, swedha, romancha, and so on and so forth. So these kind of feelings also were exhibited in Dhruv Maharaj. But as we have studied Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is mentioned that this Ashta Satvika Vikars can be easily copied or can be easily imitated, correct? Can be easily imitated by other personalities, and therefore Srila Rupa Goswami gives another set of symptoms that are more reliable. So he gives the symptoms of Shantir, Avyarta Kalatvam, Viraktir, Manasunyata. So these things cannot be imitated. And one quality he mentions, which specifically is exhibited by Dhruv Maharaj here, is Samutkanta. Samutkanta means great eagerness. So there's many definitions for the word Samutkanta. We'll see a few definitions. One Acharya explains Samutkanta as being completely, one's completely samyak utkanta, raising one's neck, utkanta. So for example, we see during Julan Yatra or during the deity's Abhishek, when there's so much crowd in front of the darshan, and some devotee who may not be very benefited with height, right? He comes behind and he is trying to, stretch himself and lift himself and look just to see the darshan, what's happening down there. So that is called utkanta. That shows some eagerness that I want to see the darshan of the Lord. So Samutkanta means completely eager. Here we see Dhruv Maharaj eagerness. The very fact that he touched the tips of the toes, but within his heart he wanted to as if embrace the Lord's lotus feet. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives a definition of Samutkanta. He says, intense longing or yearning to attain one's desired object. So sometimes in this material world also we see someone who's so infatuated by lust, he becomes, or greed, he becomes so overwhelmed to attain that object of desire. So this intense greed or this intense yearning or longing, it's like a burning desire within the heart of a devotee. He gives another definition. To muster enthusiastically all means to acquire one's coveted object. That means, what does eagerness means? Yena kena prakarina. But whatever means. Eagerness means, however it is a possible means, I will take it just to achieve that object. If I want it, I will get it. If I want it, I will get it. Prabhupada writes in a purport in the 4th canto, he says, Samutkanta, eagerness means eager to serve the Lord faithfully. So we see a few words of eagerness, intensity, enthusiasm, and faithfulness. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu gives the definition of Samutkanta. He says, it is an ardent desire to associate with the Lord. So these are the few examples of Samutkanta. A few definitions of Samutkanta. Eagerness, great eagerness. In one of his writings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrit, he explains how the bhava that a person experiences. So in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, we understand there's sadhana bhaktas, there's the bhava bhaktas, and there's the prema bhaktas. So we are all on a path practicing Vaidhi Bhakti, somehow or other to come to Raganuga Bhakti, ultimately to enter bhava Bhakti, which is known as the Premankura, just the seed of prema, and then ultimately to achieve, with all grace, the platform of Prema Bhakti. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that a person from Vaidhi Bhakti, how does he come to Raganuga Bhakti? It is still sadhana bhakti. He says that a person should develop some eagerness, some greed. He calls it lobha. He should develop some lobha. So Vaidhi practitioners are one who follows the rules and regulations very comfortably. He likes the rules and regulations. It does not mean that Raganugas don't follow rules. They also follow rules. They are still sadhana bhaktas, but they have a more greed for the Lord. So from Vaidhi to come to Raganuga, one needs to develop greed. So then Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, how do you develop this greed? He says, simple, two things. Worship the deities, keep worshipping the deities and keep hearing Krishna Katha. In this way, one's lobha will actually increase. And then from Raganuga, from Vaidhi, from sadhana bhakti basically, one can progress into bhava bhakti. Now in bhava bhakti, there's two types. One is those who achieve bhava through their own practice of sadhana. Like example is given of Narada Muni, who he did some austerities, practice, and he achieved the platform of bhava. There's other personalities like Dhruva, who got bhava by mercy. So even those who achieve mercy, like Dhruva's case, there are two more types. One is those achieve mercy by the Lord. The Lord himself gives mercy that you achieve bhava bhakti. And another is that a person achieves bhava bhakti by the mercy of a devotee. Okay, so here the Lord, Dhruva got the mercy from the Lord. Although he met Narada Muni, but Narada Muni did not specifically give him, because after meeting Narada Muni also still he had his desire that I want to achieve a position greater than my grandfather. So that Narada Muni's contact not necessarily transformed Dhruva, but only by the touch of the Lord's conch shell did the Lord personally bestow bhava bhakti onto Dhruv Maharaj. So why is these things important? Sadhana bhakta, prema bhakta, bhava bhakta. I mean, humko kya lena dena hai? Isn't it? What is important for us? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his writing, he says, oh, this consideration is very important. Why? Because we are in a preaching movement. Bhaktya sanjayate bhaktya. We know that we get bhakti from another devotee. So to identify ourselves and others on the platform of sadhana, bhava and prema is very important. He says, a prema bhakta, because he is connected purely with the Lord, has unlimited shakti, unlimited potency. He can touch anyone and make them into a pure devotee. Whether the person is a karmi or not karmi or devotee or sadhaka, no problem. A prema bhakta can touch anyone and make them into a devotee. He has unlimited power. What about a bhava bhakta? So a bhava bhakta, if he sees a neophyte, sadhaka, at most he can bring him to his level of position. If he meets a sadhaka, a bhava bhakta, if he meets a sadhaka who also has some faith and practicing, he can bring him to his level. But if he meets a karmi, for example, a materialistic person who is not in touch with devotional life, still, because of his potency, a bhava bhakta can uplift him to the point of ruchi. That is quite a high point. He can actually give him taste in devotional service. So, for a person on a level of prem, he can preach unlimitedly. He can transform anyone. For example, we see great souls, Prabhupada, can transform the most degraded of degraded also because of his pure love within his heart. And bhava bhaktas, they also have a potency to at least bring non-devotees up to having some taste, ruchi. So most of us are, at least myself, we are on the platform of sadhana, where taste is, something that comes once in a while, or especially 3 times a day during prasadam. That is the taste that we get. So, what about a sadhana bhakta's preaching? What about the sadhaka's preaching? Should he preach even? So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes that for a sadhana bhakta, sadhaka, he at most can give shraddha to a non-devotee. Because he himself doesn't have taste, he himself is struggling on the process, but he can at least give shraddha, can give the faith to the non-devotees to actually practice path of bhakti. That is actually a very great thing. So everyone from the platform of sadhana bhakta to the platform of prema bhakta can preach in their various capacities. So in this discussion of Samutkanta, Acharyas generally quote 2 examples of shlokas to explain Samutkanta. One they quote from Krishna Karnamrit, by Billu Mangala Thakur. Okay, so there's a very beautiful verse there. It says, Billu Mangala Thakur is saying, I am eagerly waiting to see that boy of Vrindavan, whose bodily beauty is captivating to the whole universe, whose eyes are always bounded by the black eyebrows and expanded like lotus petals. He who is always eagerly glancing over his devotees and therefore moving slightly here and there. His eyes are always moist, his lips are colored like copper, and through those lips there comes a sound vibration which drives one madder than a mad elephant. Oh, I want to see such a person in Vrindavan. So, this is one example that Acharyas quote about Samutkanta, eagerness, that a devotee wants eager to see Krishna in Vrajalila. Another example which generally Acharyas quote, especially Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which can be more relevant for us, is this prayers by Vritasur. So, this is dedication to Premanjan Bro, who was supposed to give the class today. So, Vritasur's prayers, he says, Ajata paksha eva mataram kaga stanyam yata vatsattara shudarta priyam priyeva vyushitam vishanna manorvindakshadidrikshate tvam. He gives three examples of eagerness. Vritasur is saying, so Vritasur in his demon form, is saying how I'm so eager to see the Lord. He gives three examples. Ajata paksha iva mataram. He says, just like baby birds are very eager to see the mother. So Chakravartipad explains, the baby bird in the nest, he's always eager for his mother. Why? Two things. One, he's very fearful of all the other owls and eagles and all other things that want to attack him. So, mummy ke paas jana hai. He wants mother. Why? Because mother will give some protection. At the same time, when the mother comes, in her beak she carries some nourishment also. So the baby bird is very eager for the mother because out of intense fear and at the same time desire for nourishment. So after saying this example, Vritasur is saying, I am also like that baby bird. I am also eager for you, my Lord. Then he thought, oh no. But this eagerness is covered with some motive. I don't want protection. I don't want this kind of swarthi nature. My Lord, I want your sweetness. So then he gives a second example. He says, Stanyam yata vatsarata. So the vatsa or the calf is always desirous or longing after its mother's milk. We see in our Goshala here also. If you go when the devotees are doing the milking, so you see how when just before the milking time itself, the calf and the mother are doing some communication. She's making a sound, she's calling out to the calf, and the calf is calling out to the mother, saying, don't worry, in 5 minutes we are going to meet. And then as the mother is brought within the area where she's tied, she's kept, and the calf is immediately released. The calf runs at such speed, runs towards his mother and immediately begins to suck milk. Yeah, he doesn't go to a wrong mother, he knows his own mother. He goes directly. So that eagerness, that tivrata is seen. But then, Vritasur also thinks that, arey, ye example bhi galat hai. I want to express my tivrata, I want to express my eagerness, I want to express my samutkanta for Krishna. But this example is also not fitting. Why? Because the calf is running to his mother with great eagerness, but it only wants to drink the milk. It is not there to serve the mother. So this example is also showing some swarthi nature. But I don't have that. I want to serve. I don't have that. I want to serve. So then Vritasur thinks that, third an example he gives. Priyam priyeva vishitam visanna. Priyam priyeva. He says, just like a wife who's waiting for her husband. So he says, this example I like. This example is very nice. He says, why? Because when a wife is waiting for a husband who's far away, she's waiting and waiting when he'll come back. She knows he's going to come. Okay, nowadays you have WhatsApp and mobiles and also, she's not so much worried, isn't it? She's like, acha 3 din ke baad aayega ye. 3 din ke baad, then she might message him, kitne baje aayenge? Then he says that I'm going to come at 10 o'clock. Till 9:30 she's relaxed. 10 o'clock, then she's a bit anxious. Correct? Arey, abhi tak aaya nahi. Modern day Kali Yuga love. So 10 o'clock, she's a bit anxious. Aaya nahi. Chalo, let's wait for some time. 10:30, she becomes a bit worried. She might call him, miscall him. She might send a message. If there's no reply, there's no call, there's no answer only, phone is not getting connected, then some tivrata starts to develop within her heart. In the last few seconds, the 11th hour, they call it. But in the wonderful times of no mobile and messaging, people would not know when only the person would come. So as the husband walks out the door, from that very moment, the wife is waiting. Can he come today? Can he come tomorrow? Will he come after 1 month? Last time he came after 2 months. Will he come again after 2 months? Day in, day out, there is a longing. So he says that this analogy I like. Why? Because when the husband comes, the wife's only desire is to serve the husband. And in that, of course, she also gets pleased. But her desire is to serve the husband. So Vritasur, yes, this bhavana I like. This mood I like. This eagerness, my Samutkanta is to serve you, my Lord, not to get anything from you. So similarly in other places in our devotional life, we have seen this longing. For example, we see the Goswamis. Srinivasa Acharya in his prayers, he says the longing of the Goswamis. He Radhe Vraja Devike Chalalite He Nanda Shuno Kuta. So he's asking, where is Krishna? Where is Lalita? Where is Radharani? Where is this? Where is that? The Goswamis are always seeing. They're always asking. They're always longing for the darshan. So in one discussion we're having on Suddha Bhakti Chintamani, it is mentioned that great souls are always having the vision of Krishna. So Maharaj there writes, seeing Krishna in everything and seeing everything in Krishna, like that. So he says it's not that great souls, whenever they look, they'll see Krishna, 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 Krishna. Not like that. What does that mean? It means that they have the capacity, the ability to see Krishna when they desire. We don't have that. Now darshan is closed. Some people want to take darshan, but they cannot. So we don't have that capacity to see Krishna always. But great souls, they can. So here Goswamis, who have the capacity to see Krishna always, still they are longing to see Krishna. Madhavendra Puri, in his famous prayers before he leave this mortal world, he says, Ai Dina Dayardanata He Maturanata Kadavalokshase Hridayam Twadaloka Kataram Daita Brahmyati Kim Karomi Aham. What am I to do now, my Lord? Kim Karomi Aham. I desire to see you. My Hridayam, my heart, not seeing you, Aloka Kataram. It is in great anxiety. It is in great misery. Oh my dear Lord, where are you? He says. In Bhagavatam, Lord Shiva also expressed his eagerness to see the Lord. He says, Darshanam no didirkshunam dehi bhagavatarchitam. Darshanam nah. Give us that darshan. Didirkshunam. I am eager to see. What am I eager to see? I am eager to see that form of yours which is dear to the devotees. Like that, Lord Shiva expressed his eagerness to see the Lord. In Brahma, in his prayers, he also says in second canto, Brahma with great conviction is saying, he says this to 6th chapter, he says this to Narada, that look, because of my great zeal and enthusiasm and eagerness to catch hold of the Lord's lotus feet, 3 things happened to me. He says, Na bharati menga mrshopalakshate. My words never become false. Whatever I say is true only. Na vai kvachin me manaso mrshagati. My mind never gets distracted. My mind never gets diverted. My mind never goes on any wrong path. Na me hrishikani patantya satpate. My senses never indulge in anything wrong. Asatpate. My senses never go wrong. Why? Yan me hridautkantyavatadrito hari. Because with great eagerness, with great zeal, I am holding on to the lotus feet of the Lord. So this is Brahmaji's conviction, his great eagerness. Like that, actually, so many examples are there across Bhagavatam. One that comes to mind is Akrura. So when Akrura is entering Vraja, in his Vraja Gamana, he gives a stuti, he actually glorifies Krishna. He says, in very all great conviction, he says, Tvam twadya nunam mahatam gatim gurum trailokya kantam drishiman mahotsavam. He says, Adya, today, certainly, nunam, I am going to see that Supreme Lord. Yeah, conviction. Sometimes we also know, 7 o'clock, today, certainly I'll take darshan. Isn't it? Anyone has any doubts? No. If I miss 7 o'clock darshan, no problem. Till 7:45 I have a chance. Between 7:45 and 8:15 break time. Isn't it? For darshan. After 8:15 darshan will be there. Then next after that? 10:20. Isn't it? 11:20. 11:20. So much time is there. Darshan anytime is available. Free darshan. So, but Akrura is not feeling like that. He says, Tam tva adhya nunam. Certainly today I will get darshan of he. Trilokya kantam. He's very dear to the three worlds. Drishiman mahotsavam. Seeing him is like a festival. So this is the eagerness of Akrura. In this Brahma Vimohan Leela also, when Krishna took the form of calves and boys. So when the cows on top of the hill, when they saw their calves, they came running down the hill with great enthusiasm, with great eagerness, and they began to lick their calves. So it's mentioned, if you've seen even in our Goshala, when when the calves are released for milking, you'll see the mother licking and licking and licking the calves and licking, and sometimes they are licking with such great force. The head of the calf is going down, like that, the force of the mother licking. So there it's mentioned in Brahma Vimohan Leela, when the cows are licking their calves, it's as if they wanted to swallow them. So much they're licking as if they're going to swallow them. That was the eagerness that they are exhibiting. Of course, because the calves were Krishna themselves. The calves were not only ordinary calves, they were Krishna expanded form. Or Krishna himself. So, one thinks that, this is all good for Vrajavasis and all the associates of Krishna. They all have this eagerness. But what about other personalities? So yes, even other personalities who came in contact with Krishna, they too developed this eagerness. One very off example is of the 20,800 kings that were defeated by Jarasandh. So Jarasandh had a fortress called Giridroni. In Giridroni, he had captured all the kings that he had defeated, 20,800 kings. And when Krishna had come and released these kings were in such a very dirty state. Imagine being trapped in a prison, and when you come out of prison, not come out of prison, but when you come out of a very dirty state, generally, what does a person feel? He wants to take a bath, he wants to get fresh, he wants to get better. But these kings, in such a shabby, dirty state, when they saw Krishna, immediately it's mentioned, Pibanta eva chakshurbyam, lihanta eva jivaya, jigranta eva nasabhyam, rabhanta eva babuham. They mentioned that when they see Krishna, they were as if wanting to drink him with their eyes. They wanted to lick him with their tongues. They wanted to take his scent with their nose. And they wanted to as if hug him with their arms. So this was the same emotions which were exhibited by Dhruva, which were exhibited by the great associates in Vrajalila. This was the same emotions that the king felt upon seeing Krishna. This was their Samutkanta. Jai Shri Shri Radha Vrindavan Bihari Bhagavan ki. So this is one level of bhava which exhibits Samutkanta. Samutkanta comes in the platform of bhava, great eagerness. Now, what about us, or most of us at least, who are on the platform of sadhaka, practicing devotion? So we have heard of 3 different levels, right? That one is called Utsahan. Utsahan means enthusiasm. Utsahan Nischaya Dhairyat. So this Upadeshamrit was written especially for the sadhaka bhaktas. There Utsahan is mentioned as enthusiasm. What is this enthusiasm? Enthusiasm to follow the limbs of sadhana bhakti. Utna tak to karo. Enthusiasm to follow the limbs and the principles and the rules and the regulation of sadhana bhakti. This is one level of enthusiasm. On a higher level is Samutkanta, which happens in bhav. But we have also understood, we have also heard of another kind of enthusiasm, which is called Utsahamai. So Utsahamai is there, Utsahan is there in the practice of sadhaka, and Samutkanta is there. Utsahamai is an obstacle. So when one tries to practice bhakti and one try to come to the platform of nishta, determined practice, fixed practice, there are some obstacles. One of the obstacle is this Utsahamai. So Chakratipat gives a nice definition. He says, what is Utsahamai? He gives an example. When a Brahmana child, having just begun study of scriptures, he immediately thinks that, oh, now I have become a learned scholar and I am worthy of everyone's praise. Thoda bahut 2-3-4 shlok pat kiya. He remembers everything and he feels that I am worthy of others' praise. So a person just beginning in devotional service, he may develop the audacity, the proud mentality to think that now I have mastered everything. This is called Utsahamai, or filled, puffed up with enthusiasm. So this is a semblance or a negative form of enthusiasm. An enthusiasm which is covered with pride. So therefore, as long as a person is succumb to this Utsahamai, his practice of bhajan is anishtita. It is not fixed. So to come from anishtita to nishtya bhajan, one has to overcome this Utsahamai. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions that you may have Samutkanta, eagerness for the Lord, one may even have bhava. But this greed that is manifested in a person is of two types. This greed is temporary in a sadhaka, in one type, and another type is this greed is innate, meaning is not seen. He calls this as shanika and maisargika. He says, what is this shainik greed, lobha, shanik greed? He says, when a person sits for a class, when he hearing some lecture, and then when some Leela, Vraja Leela is explained, and the characteristics of Nanda Maharaj and Gopas and all this are explained, a person feels so enthusiastic. Yeah, I also want to serve Krishna like Nanda Maharaj. I also want to serve Krishna like the Gopas. So that is called Shanika. Why? After class, that lobha goes away. So just for a moment, he feels that utsahi, that greed. For example, devotees generally after Bhagavatam class or after hearing something, they feel a sense of, I'm a platform of pure devotion. The heart becomes so light, the feelings of ecstasy comes. One feels that, wow, nothing can disturb me in my day. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur say, this is only temporary, it is short-lived. After the next moment, that bhava or that emotion of greed is gone. Then he says there's another category of devotees who have innate greed. Innate. It doesn't even come up. Not even temporarily it doesn't come up. So he says such people are more difficult. He calls them maisargika. Such people are more difficult, he said. So then he says it is up to the guru. The spiritual master only has the duty to examine the disciple and to lift his greed. Because practice of bhakti is nothing but lalasa. It is nothing but greed. Different levels of intensity of greed. How one intensifies one's greed for Krishna, for practicing bhakti. So such devotees who have innate greed, he hears a lecture, he doesn't hear a lecture, he feels a little non-difference. I like, but that thing has not come up in me. So then Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, such personalities, he has to be dependent on his guru's mercy. He says, in fact, it is the duty of the spiritual master, the spiritual authority, to examine the person and find what greed he has for the 4 different types of rasa. Is he leaning towards dasya, sakya, vatsalya or madhurya? It is the job of the guru. Then he says, he gives a warning that if the guru or the spiritual authority neglects such an innate person, he doesn't bother to examine him or to try to jagrit that bhavana in him, then there's a very high danger that this person will just plateau. You know plateauing? He will just plateau in his practice of devotion and after slowly go astray. So it's a very relevant and very amazing thing that Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. So at least even if we have shanik, we have a moment of greed, we have to be considered a little fortunate. Whereas if we are not feeling any greed within our heart, then we should surrender to the authorities, surrender to the Guru, and let them examine us to find out or to see where do I fit. Then he says a very nice point, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He says, it is not that everyone must be a sadhaka of Madhurya Ras. Sometimes we think that I'm in Gaudiya Parampara, so we have the highest thing. Therefore, ultimately, my aim should be for Madhurya. He says, no, the jivas have their own fixed component, and according to their practice, the Swarupa will reveal. So he says that it is not that everyone must be a sadhaka of Madhurya. It is not that. So like that we can see, and I would just like to share one article that His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj, he had written. So Maharaj wrote this in an offering to Prabhupada in 2004 on his Vyasa Puja. He quotes this verse saying that how we can develop this tivrata. He says, Yat sevaya bhagavata kutastasya madhu dvisha rati raso bhavet tivra padayor vyasanadana. So this is a verse from the 3rd canto, 7th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is mentioned, by serving the feet of the spiritual master, one is enabled to develop transcendental ecstasy in the service of the personality of Godhead. So basically, if one wants some rati, some bhava, some tivra, the word tivra is used here. Tivrena, bhakti yogena. The tivrata, some eagerness. Enthusiasm is one side. Enthusiasm is utsahan nischayat dhairyat. You add a little masala to it, it becomes eagerness. Right? It becomes more intensified. That tivrata. So here it's mentioned that if one wants to develop that tivrata, that rati, that bhava for Krishna, one has to engage in the worship of the spiritual master. So, in his very lengthy but very beautiful article, Giriraj Maharaj says that what is this service? It's simple. Service to Guru means service to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada has given all his desires. He has mentioned what all he wants for a devotee, what all he expects for a devotee. He says Prabhupada has given his desires and one just has to work to fulfill the desires of Srila Prabhupada. And in such a way that is called Guru Seva. By working towards fulfilling the desires of Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada has already stated his expectation from his disciples. If one works towards fulfilling these desires, one can actually develop some tivrata. He says, there is a big difference between taking association and serving the Guru. He says, I'll read. He quotes from Jiva Goswami actually. Jiva Goswami glorifies the result of associating with pure devotees, satsanga. It is the only process which can give strong love for Krishna, just by association. That is true. But as powerful and beneficial as hearing and chanting in the association is prasanga. Prasanga means taking the association, hearing and chanting together. Although that is very powerful, albeit, but chanting and hearing brings exceptional result. Vashishtam phalam, Jiva Goswami says. The same prasanga, it brings exceptional results. Vashishtam phalam, an even greater love for Krishna, if it is done in the mood of paricharya. Paricharya means rendering service to the pure devotees. So there is prasanga, taking the association. We stress sadhu sangha, sarva shastra koi. Everyone should do sadhu sangha. It's the only means. They take the association. But within the association, taking the prasanga of hearing and chanting with devotees, one should not neglect this paricharya, this opportunity to serve the devotees, because this is the only means that one can develop tivra. Giriraj Maharaj said tivra means intensity. So this is a secret, that yes, we are taking sadhu sangha, but ultimately that if you put prasanga with tivrata, it manifests as paricharya. Or prasanga through paricharya helps us to manifest tivrata. So therefore, he calls on all devotees to actually serve Srila Prabhupada with intense devotion. And in such way, one can actually gain intensity for serving Krishna, as this Bhagavatam verse mentions. So I thought I'll end with today's class with a nice Vraja Leela about Krishna's eagerness. So this comes from Anand Vrindavan Champu. Anand Vrindavan Champu. So Kavi Karnapur writes a beautiful Leela about Krishna's eagerness. Let's hear how Krishna is eager. We heard so much about how devotees are eager, how we should develop eagerness. We show what are the obstacles of fake eagerness, utsahamai. But now we want to see how Krishna is also eager. So this happens in the Kalya Daman Leela. Kavi Karnapur is giving beautiful descriptions how Krishna has actually subdued Kalya. And now these are the events after having subdued Kalya. Hearing the cheering of his friends submerged Krishna in an ocean of happiness. The subduer of Kalya warmly embraced each of his boyfriends. That sweet Lord who pleases the Vrajavasis by living with them in Vrindavan relaxed on the riverbank, enjoying with his friends. So Krishna very difficultly and very amazingly had defeated Kalya, and everyone was so anxious. Now Krishna comes out of the river like a hero, and all his friends are there, and he embraces each one of them. Don't worry, don't worry. And very nonchalantly, he sits down and he relaxes himself on the banks of the river. Seeing the setting sun, Nanda Maharaj, the Vrajaraj, he announced, "Listen, my dear Vrajavasis, it is almost night. I can see the frightening darkness as the personification of Rudra. My glorious sun has restored the purity of this lake by removing the poison. So let us now spend the night here in this auspicious place." We hear this pastime in the Bhagavatam also. After the Kalya Daman Leela, all the Vrajavasis stayed one night in the banks of the river. Then what happened next? There was a forest fire, yeah. So before the forest fire, there's some descriptions which Kavi Karnapur mentions. He says, how did they reciprocate with Krishna? So they took Krishna, all the Vrajavasis, and they kept him in the center. Keeping Krishna in the center, the Vrajavasis surrounded him in 5 circles. You want to know what are the circles? In the first circle, standing closest to Krishna, who are they? Any guesses? Nanda Maharaj, the elder Gopas. Everyone is thinking, where are the gopis? Isn't it? So in the first circle, the first vyuha, stood Nanda Maharaj and the elder Gopas and Yashoda and all the cowherd boyfriends of Krishna. The young gopis also stood there, but they were standing beside their mothers. The mothers were controlling them, but still they were in the first vyuha. And the married gopis, they stood beside their mother-in-laws. They won't stand beside their husband. Oh, rasabas ho gaya. Husband ke baju mein and then looking at Krishna. Barabar na? So the unmarried gopis were standing beside their mothers looking at Krishna in the first vyuha. How big the vyuha is, I don't know. So vyuha means that circle. And the married gopis, they were standing beside their mother-in-law. So there was a fear also. There was no rasabas standing beside their husband. The husbands of the loving gopis, right? Those gopis who were married. Where did they stand? They stand in the second vyuha, piche. So wives were standing in front of their mothers and the husbands were standing behind. So no rasabas there. And in the second vyuha, the husbands of these gopis formed. And in the third vyuha, the men who carried bows and arrows, they formed the third vyuha. In the fourth vyuha stood the cows, calves, and all the other animals. They stood there forming the fourth circle. And in the fifth vyuha, all the famous chivalrous soldiers of Vraja, they stood forming the fifth circle. So these are the 5 circles that are formed around Krishna on the banks of this Yamuna after this Kalya episode. So the Vrajavasis spent half the night discussing about the beauty of Krishna, and how he defeated Kalya. Afterwards, slowly, when you're doing Krishna Katha late in the night, they felt a little sleepy. And then the sweet and pleasant time of sleep arrived. And all the Vrajavasis fell asleep. Except Krishna and Radha. So let's see. In the quiet hours of the night, the eyes and the minds of the gopis derived full satisfaction from lovingly gazing at the attractive moon-like faces of Krishna. Chandravali and other gopi leaders relished a joyous festival for the eyes. So here's the scene. Everyone is surrounding Krishna, and in the front section is actually Krishna standing with all his loving friends, his parents, at the same time the gopis also. So slowly, as people are rejoicing this, everyone slowly began to fall asleep. As everyone falls asleep, Krishna is not asleep. So when all the gopis and everyone else falls asleep, Krishna is awake. And with great eagerness, he's lifting his head, Samutkanta. He's lifting his head, trying to catch the glance of Srimati Radharani. Amazingly, Srimati Radhika, she is also not asleep. So when people, hut together and they're falling asleep, generally people fall asleep on each other. But when someone is not sleepy in his heart, he's waiting for others to go asleep. And when others fall asleep, he wakes up and he starts looking. Kidhar hai wo? So similarly, Radharani she woke up and she's looking at Krishna. And Krishna, between all his friends, he's also looking at Radharani. So that is Krishna's eagerness and Radharani's eagerness, which Kavi Karnapur explains how, despite that within the midst of all his Gopa friends and associates, Krishna is eager to meet Radha, and Krishna extends their necks in anticipation. And when their eyes locked in enchantment, they spotted with each other two romantic glances. So this is the pure love that we can see in the spiritual world. Sometimes we see a perverted reflection even in the material world, isn't it? If a lady has a paramour and she hugs the husband, right? She hugs one man but she's looking at another man, like that. So these are all perverted reflections of that greed. But from today's discussion, we can understand that one devotee was sharing that how His Holiness Radha Swami Maharaj says that no one stays in devotion on a same platform. Everyone is either always going upwards or going downwards. So day by day as we practice bhakti, we should always look towards increasing our devotion. And a way to increase this devotion is to actually try to develop some eagerness for Krishna. So the Acharyas has given varieties of examples and methods by which one can increase one's eagerness. We discuss a few: by worshipping the deities, by hearing, by associating, by serving the Vaishnavas, especially the Guru Varga. One can actually develop some eagerness in the heart for Krishna, who for us is so accessible. And when something is so accessible, it is taken cheaply. So with this, I would like to end. I seek forgiveness if there's something wrong or something I've said which is beyond my capacity. I hope that whatever we shared can actually serve you in some way to increase all of our mutual eagerness in the practice of bhakti. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.